Hello everybody, my name is Hemant Bedekar, and in this webinar we're going to see how to invoke an external web service from CAPS. In order to invoke any external web service, you need two things. You need a provider who provides the implementation of a web service, and you need a visual document that describes how to invoke the web service. For the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to use the xmethods.net website and invoke one of the web services that are hosted by that website. So on this page you see the temperature conversion web service. What this web service does, it receives the Fahrenheit temperature as input and it returns Celsius as the Celsius equivalent of that Fahrenheit temperature as output. It also does the other way around, so it receives Celsius as input, returns Fahrenheit as output. For the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to use the Fahrenheit to Celsius conversion service. So before I create a client in CAPS, I'm gonna test this web service to make sure that it works. So I'm going to do my testing using SOAP UI. So SOAP UI is a very good tool that will allow you to test a web service. I import the WSDL and it shows me all the operations. So I'm going to use the Fahrenheit to Celsius operation. So I'm going to test it. So double click, it shows you the SOAP input right there. Set the Fahrenheit temperature and then we'll invoke the web service and it should return the Celsius equivalent. So in SOAP UI, the result should show in the right hand pane. So call the web service, and the output should show in the right hand pane. There you go. So the output of the web service is 22.22 for the input of 72. So we know that the web service works. So that's from SOAP UI. Now let's create a client in CAPS now. So let's go over to CAPS. First thing you do, you create a new project. So create a new project, give it a name, call web service. I'm going to use a business process to orchestrate. So I'll create a new business process. So right click, new business process. I'm going to need a web service object to call the web service. So I'm going to create a visual object. So you right click, say import web service definition, and you could use file system or URL. I have the WSDL in my file system, so I can use file system. Say next. Choose the WSDL file and just finish the wizard. It will create all the objects for you. So next, shows you the WSDLs, shows you the operations, and say finish. So it creates all the port types and operations for you. So the port type, it has one port type and it has 4 operations. I'm going to use the Fahrenheit to Celsius operation. So drag and drop it onto the business process canvas. I'm going to use, we are invoking it as a client. So choose the client mode, say okay. I'm going to use the file EVA as input and output. It will also work as a trigger. So we'll read the Fahrenheit temperature from a file and we'll write the Celsius temperature to a file. So drag and drop a file receive and a file write onto the business process canvas, and use business rules to do the mapping. So business rule there, business rule here, input as well as output. Hook up everything, connect everything, pretty straightforward there. And connect this to the end. Okay, let's just make sure it looks a little better. So there you go, and here. Let's configure the business rule. So we read the temperature, the Fahrenheit temperature from a file, and that is going to be the input to the web service. So let's do the mapping here. So map that node to the Fahrenheit. It's complaining because the input of the file EVA is a string and the input of the web service is actually a decimal. But the Beeple engine will do the data mapping for us, so we don't have to worry about it. So do the same thing on the output side. The result of the web service, map it to the input of the file OTD so that it will write it to the file. So it complains on the output side. Validate the business process. That's a warning message, so it's telling we don't have any fault handlers, which is okay. Say okay, save it, close it. We are now ready to create a connectivity map. So let's go ahead and create a connectivity map. So right click, new, and connectivity map. Drag the business process and use the auto connectivity map generator. So that's the icon, click on it, and it will create all the externals and it will connect all the externals for you. So just makes the process easier. Those red dots, they tell you that external needs to be configured. So double click the file input. I don't need to change anything, accept the defaults. Same thing on the output side. I don't need to change anything. Output.dat is good. So say okay, save it and close it. We're now ready to create the Deployment profile. So before I create the deployment profile, I need to create an environment. So let's go ahead and create a new environment. So click on the Environment Explorer, right click, New Environment. I'm going to need a new logical host. So right click and create a new logical host. Logical host there. It's the logical host. Inside the new logical host, I need to create a new integration server. So create a new integration server. I need to set the properties. I need to set the password. So by default, the password is always STC in capitals. So set STC. The port numbers, I'm using the default values, 18,000. I'm not changing that. So we'll use default values for that. So that's good. Say OK. I'm going to need two externals, the web service external and a file external. So let's go ahead and create a file external, give it a name, and the properties of the file. So I need to set the directory from which the file will be read and file will be written to. So ctemp is good. I don't need to change it. I'm going to accept the default values. There you go. And now let's create a web service external. So it's called SOAP HTTP web service external system. Give it a name, and we are invoking it as a client. So use the client mode. So there. And then the properties. We don't need to set anything here, so this is good. So say OK. So there you have it. That's the environment. So now let's go ahead and create a deployment profile and build the project. So you right click, new deployment profile, and give it a name. We only have one environment, so that's good. And we will build the project and deploy it. So we need to map it before I build it. So build the project. It takes a few seconds to build the project, so just stay with it. There you go. The project is built. Say OK, and now I'm going to go ahead and deploy it. So make sure that that your domain is up and running. Mine is, so I'm going to go ahead and deploy it. So I say deploy. You see in the lower hand left corner, you see a status message. You don't see a pop-up anymore. So that's a new feature in 5.1.3. The project is deployed. I'm ready to go. I need to feed an input, so it's going to look for input1.txt in temp. So I already have a file there. So let's see what's in there. Open the file. The input is going to be Fahrenheit temperature. So just input a value, say 90. Save the file and rename it to input.txt. And the file will get picked up by the file leeway, and the output file will get generated. So there you go. Output file. Open it in text editor. That's the Celsius equivalent. So there you have it. We seen how to create a client from CAPS and invoke an external web service.